A lot of things we need a little bit of truth in. We need a little bit of understanding. Knowledge and wisdom produce peace when we understand what is really going on. And what we're seeing right now is that there's a lot of crazy going on because the mainstream media really won't cover a lot of things that are important for us to know. And this leads to our incredible guest today, who has, she's a journalist and she has been studying something extremely important. Many of you have been following a little bit about what's going on, and some of you this will be new to, but this is groundbreaking. It's something we all need to know about. And her name is Carey Gillam. She is a veteran investigative journalist with more than 25 years of experience covering corporate news, including 17 years as a senior correspondent for Reuters International News Service. She is the author of Whitewash, the story of a weed killer, cancer, and the corruption of science, an expose of corporate corruption in agriculture. The book won the coveted Rachel Carson Book Award from the Society of Environmental Journalists in 2018. Gillam works now as research director for the nonprofit U.S. Right to Know and as a columnist for The Guardian. Her book has just come out, The Monsanto Papers, and it is going like a rocket. And we have this author here today. I'm so blessed to have her. Her name is Carey. Thank you for coming to the show, Carey.
Well, hi. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Although, I was a member of that mainstream media for a long time, and maybe I still am. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
so
we
what do you say?
Yeah.
What do you say? I mean, the journalistic integrity that you have is really going after the truth. And because of that, you came out with some pretty incredible information that people maybe didn't know. And you exposed it, and you had your first book, you had some backlash from that, and now you've come out with the Monsanto Papers. So what do you say about mainstream media? Do you have a soft spot in your heart for them because you were doing that?
Sure. I mean, this, hopefully won't be what we talk about endlessly, although I suppose we could. Yeah, I mean, I've been a journalist for 30 years. I was a member of the largest news organization, one of the largest news outlets in the world, Reuters, and have great fondness and respect for the profound work that journalists, have done and continue to do every day. And a lot of journalists go to great, personal risk and expense to illuminate the truthful information about very controversial subjects. I would also say, over this past year, particularly, some of the coverage that I've seen, and with the COVID crisis, I really have become quite disappointed in mainstream media and the way that these issues are covered, and the lack of sort of balance and just inquiry, trying to discern the truth. I see a lot of mainstream media just parroting information that government tells them to put out there without questioning it whatsoever or providing any balance or criticism. And I think that's been really disappointing, because you need that more than ever in times like the COVID crisis.
You sure do.
You need those hard questions to be asked, and you need for government leaders to be held accountable. You don't want media to just be parroting what they're told. And so I've been very disappointed in that regard.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you're saying. Is that what led you then to begin investigating the first book, Whitewash?
So that's a story. We'll talk about that. So Monsanto was a company that I first really became familiar with in 1998. I'm assuming maybe not. A lot of your viewers are familiar with the company. It's a large company. It's actually owned by Bayer, the German pharmaceutical conglomerate, Bayer AG, based in Germany now. It was purchased in 2018. But in the 1990s, when Reuters assigned me to cover Monsanto, it was based in St. Louis, Missouri, and it would put out genetically engineered crops that were designed to be sprayed with this chemical called glyphosate, which was part of Monsanto's Roundup herbicide. And many viewers may know Roundup herbicide is the most widely used herbicide in the world. And it's so ubiquitous now that it's found in rainfall and air samples. It's found in the water we drink, the food we consume. It's found in human urine very frequently, because this chemical is is so widely used not only in agriculture and farming, but in school districts and parks and playgrounds and cities and towns, and utilities sprayed around their facilities, and it's having a profound impact, not only on our health but on environmental health. And as I learned about it and started writing and covering the research and the science and talking to farmers and just digging in and doing document discoveries with EPA and FDA and USDA, I found over the years that what we were being told, from the powerful companies and from the regulators, wasn't really true, and that there was a real safety concern and a very profound impact on human health, in particular with an association to cancer from exposure to this chemical, as well as a range of environmental problems. And that's what led me to write my first book. Boy, did I come under attack from the chemical company. I mean, Monsanto, we found out, we got internal documents that showed a range of strategies that they were trying to employ to discredit me, to get me kicked off my beat at Reuters, to tear down the book. And the thing was, they wanted to do it all sort of surreptitiously. They didn't want it to look like it was coming from them. They wanted it to look like it was coming from independent third parties. But that was the first book. Thankfully, it won 3 awards and got very good reviews. And I've now written this second book, which is quite different, and is much more of a sort of people call it a legal thriller, a narrative about a man with cancer who was the first person actually to take Monsanto to trial and to win, proving that their chemical causes cancer. And so the second book takes you, into his home and into his struggle to stay alive with this terrible cancer, the impact on his family, his wife, and how he and a group of lawyers fought this company. So it's a very long answer, isn't it?
No, that's wonderful. So can we go back to when they attacked you? Did they try to bring any legal consequences, to you? Or how did they try to get you? Was it more of a, backstabbing?
Yeah, so I've never been sued for libel or, for any inaccuracies in my work, or, they don't even really accuse me of having inaccuracies in my books or my work. The main thing that they would say to me when I was working at Reuters is that I was using false balance. I was quoting critics. I was quoting people who didn't agree with Monsanto. I was exploring, avenues of debate and discussion that didn't dovetail with their talking points and their propaganda, and they really took issue with that. So, they did try to get me removed from my beat. There are internal documents that talk about, working as hard as they can to get rid of me, and waiting for the day I'll be taken off my beat, and what a pain in the ass I am, I think is what they referred to me. And then, of course, the spreadsheet about how they wanted to, there was a Carey Gillam book action plan that they had. We found out they have a fusion center where they work with third parties to try to harass and intimidate and discredit people, not only journalists, but scientists, anyone speaking out or trying to tell the truth about, the science or about their products. They want to silence them. They want to censor them. And that's part of what I write about in the book, and what we've discovered. And, I feel like what they did to me was really, really hard, but I'm like one little person. And so if they would put all this effort into trying to intimidate and silence me, what in the world are they doing to scientists, top international cancer scientists who've been attacked and harassed?
So as you've seen the cancel culture recently, just explode, literally silencing the president of the United States from Twitter, and whether you like him or not, the freedom of speech has faced quite a blow. So when you've seen cancel culture, all kinds of people being, ostracized, they're losing their reputations, they're losing a lot. Basically, you must have sort of kind of, as a forerunner, this happened to you earlier than recently, the attacks.
Yeah, it really did. I've been, if you Google me, depending on, I guess your search engine, you'll there are numerous pieces out there that just, I've been accused of all sorts of things, of participating in extortion with someone who's now in prison, of being an unregistered foreign agent, trying to undermine, confidence in our food supply, being a liar, these sorts of things. And these articles have been written by organizations that we have found out in documents have been funded by Monsanto and other players in the chemical industry, but they're secretly funded. And then they go out and they attack and try to silence. So, I don't know if that fits into the cancel culture sort of, idea, but certainly, I have experienced what it's like to try to have the truthful information I'm putting out there shut down. And yeah, I mean, it's frightening, it's scary, and it's sad, truthfully. I mean, I think I've said this all my life, I guess. I'm not afraid of debate. I think debate is a healthy thing in society. I don't think we always should be in agreement on everything all the time. I think debate and discussion and healthy engagement with ideas that maybe you don't support is a way we learn and we grow, and a way hopefully we become better, as people and as a society.
Okay.
But when it gets vitriolic, when you're attacking someone's, character, you're trying to injure them, emotionally, physically, or just silence them, like that's just wrong.
It really is.
And there has to be a balance. There just has to be some sort of balance.
Yes, absolutely. So what has given you the strength, before we get into, I mean, I'd like to know more about what we need to be concerned about in our environment, but before we get to that, what has given you the strength to actually combat this? Because a lot of people wouldn't have that kind of ability, like they would just run, and they are running. They can't take the heat, but you can.
I don't know. I'm a mouthy woman who doesn't like to be told to sit down and shut up, I guess, right? I don't know. I mean, I think it's just part of the personality or how you were raised, or, my dad was somebody who embraced, debate around the dinner table. And we've had a lot of hearty debates. Unfortunately, he died of cancer in October. But he raised me to get out there and speak my truth and do my best to, make a positive difference in the world. So maybe that's why.
Amazing. And we thank you. Yeah, we thank you for that. Do you think that has your work then helped to curb what we're dealing with agents in the environment? And are we any safer? Or is this a long, hard battle it's just the beginning?
I think a lot of people do give me some sort of credit for raising awareness about the harms of glyphosate and Monsanto's Roundup products. I was writing about it before it was cool. I was writing about it well more than a decade ago, about the science. And I recall, when my book first came out, a lot of journalists and other people were very skeptical and thought, gosh, I was really going out on a limb with my research. And now, of course, people are like, oh, wow, you really got it right. And, how remarkable that is, which, I always knew my work was true and was factual. But I think I'm one player. I'm trying to do research and share it with the public by gathering documents and data about scientific research and regulatory actions and policies and practices and how they relate to human health and environmental health. Because, this is what we have. This is the legacy that we're leaving our children. And there are very many, I'm not, new to say this, very many environmental contaminants that we have allowed to be prevalent in our world now, that are contributing to, cancers in children and adults, that are contributing to reproductive problems, rising problems with infertility, neurodevelopmental problems with children, ADHD, autism, attention deficit issues. These things are documented in the science, but there are very powerful interests who make money off of these chemicals and these products, who want to keep that information closed or silent as much as possible, and who are influencing our regulators to keep those products on the market and to keep making money off them, even though the evidence is really becoming overwhelming about how dangerous they are. So, that's sort of, I guess, my mission. I certainly want to be balanced and factual in everything I do. I'm not out there to try to, ban pesticides across the world. I just think people need to be educated and informed about the risks, so that we can speak out and be part of and engaged in public policies to protect health.
Right. So are you able to actually speak to places like Congress where decisions, are they made on a national level like that? Or is it individual counties and states that have to govern or make these kinds of decisions?
Right. Well, I've spoken around the world. I was asked to speak in 2017 to the European Parliament in Brussels about my research and my work on glyphosate, because at that time the European Union was looking at whether or not they should continue to allow it on the market. I've spoken in, France and Belgium, of course, in Brussels, and the Netherlands and Australia and Canada and Thailand and Mexico, and people around the world have wanted to hear about this. I have spoken to some staffers on Capitol Hill who ask for my input and research, but really, it's like anything else. To see change, I think it starts with community. It starts with citizenry, and people who are informed and care, and then lobbying or becoming active and vocal, right, in their communities, either on a local level, state, federal, however it is. That these people are inclined. And I find activists to be, really impressive people. I don't do that. I don't march or carry a sign or get involved in lobbying. My role is simply to provide information. So I'm one cog in the wheel, right? And you are, and there are many cogs in the wheel.
Well, that's a really good point. That's a really good point that, you have literally given years of your life to bring good information, to bring a warning, and that's your role in it. And so when those activists then take that and they go, my goodness, we have a problem, it's all part of saving lives, isn't it? And I hope that those lives are saved. So do you feel that when we go to the supermarket, I just want to, as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking, I go to the supermarket, I buy a head of broccoli. How do I know if my vegetables are safe?
Well, safe is, right, a very subjective word. So if you are buying broccoli that it's been grown conventionally, it probably has residues of several different types of, pesticides on it. And when you eat that broccoli, you will probably consume, residues of those pesticides. It's very hard to wash pesticides off of a food that's been grown in an environment where those pesticides are used. So whether or not that is safe, is subject to debate. Regulators set levels of pesticides in foods that they tell us are safe. If it's below those levels, they say don't worry about it. If it's above those levels, they say that can be a problem.
What do you think about those levels?
Those levels, the way that those levels are set is in conjunction with the companies that sell the pesticides. The companies that sell the pesticides essentially tell the regulators where those levels should be set. And I've seen enough internal documents from our EPA in the US to know that there's a lot of information that is hidden from the public. I have emails in which they, talk about illegally high levels found in certain foods that they're not going to report and that they're not going to do anything about. And I have, emails from scientists in the FDA talking about, finding glyphosate residues in particular in all this food that they brought from home. And the only thing they couldn't find it in this particular email the scientists were talking about was broccoli.
Oh, okay. So I like broccoli. So that there's one positive, note there.
Yeah.
I want to say, Carrie, that people are asking, we're talking to Carey Gillam, and she is the author of the Monsanto Papers, and her book is just out. You can get her book, I guess, on Amazon, I'm assuming, but people are also asking if you have an Audible version.
So the book, Island Press is my publisher, Island Press. They informed me a week or so ago that it has been, a deal has been cut with Audible. So it will be coming out in an audiobook very soon. It's also available as an ebook, a Kindle or an ebook. And it's sold pretty much anywhere, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You can order directly from Island Press or independent bookstores. There is distribution in Canada and other countries as well.
Excellent.
But yeah, it's getting good reviews. And I'm really happy about this book because it is such a human story. I mean, my first book was so much more of an academic, sort of science-heavy book. And this one is really just filled with so many twists and turns and, unexpected things and moments where you cry or you're horrified or you're surprised or you're angry. So I'm hoping, that people will feel the book resonate with them, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. It brings that human element to what we're actually dealing with. If you could explain what glyphosate is for us who are not, sort of chemically aware, what is glyphosate?
It's a chemical. Monsanto patented it in 1974.
So totally man-made, a totally man-made.
It's a synthetic chemical. It was a compound. The herbicidal elements of it were discovered, sort of over the years, and then Monsanto was able to patent it in 1974. And it's the key ingredient that Monsanto has used in its, Roundup brands and Ranger Pro and a whole lot of other names. And the patent expired in 2000, and so there are, generic versions of it, and other companies have glyphosate-based herbicides that they sell. There are 700 or so products sold around the world. So glyphosate is the most widely used type of weed killer in the world. And as I said, use of it really skyrocketed and took off in the 90s when Monsanto introduced genetically engineered crops that could be sprayed directly with this chemical, glyphosate. And the weeds in the fields would die, but the crops would not. And farmers initially really loved this technology because it made their job killing weeds a lot easier. And they didn't have to till up their soil, and it just was an easier, more efficient way for them to deal with weeds. But this did leave, much higher residues in the finished foods. Of course, if you're spraying it directly on corn or soybeans or cotton, they even spray it directly on wheat, even though wheat is not genetically engineered. They can spray it directly on wheat before they harvest it. So you can find glyphosate in bread products a lot of the time. And in flour, I remember documents from a university professor where he was talking about how surprised he was to find glyphosate in all the flour samples he looked at. So,
wow.
It's important. It sounds like a nerdy kind of a thing, glyphosate, who cares about it? But your viewers, if they went and had their urine tested for glyphosate, they probably have some weed killer in there, which means you're consuming it and it's healthy.
And it's shown to be not good for you, for human beings.
The International Agency for Research on Cancer has examined decades of scientific studies and said it's a probable human carcinogen with a particularly strong association to non-Hodgkin lymphoma and a type of blood cancer. And that is the story of Lee Johnson, the man in my new book, and how he came to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And the doctors told him he only had 18 months to live, and his battle both against cancer and against Monsanto. So it's a tragedy. It's a tragic story that cancer affects so many lives here in the U.S. I can't remember the stat now for Canada. I had it a while ago, but it's similar to the U.S. But here in the U.S., 39.8% of people living in the U.S. are expected to get cancer in their lifetimes.
Wow.
Which to me is just not something that is acceptable or should be acceptable.
Right. On the back of your book, you're basically outlining how with enough money and influence could a company endanger its customers, hide evidence, manipulate regulators, and get away with it all for decades. And so you're bringing one man's story of how he was affected by the corruption that's been happening by huge organizations hiding the harms that can come to one person. So this man's name is Lee. Is it? I'm not certain what happens at the end of the book. I guess we don't want to give away the story.
We don't give away.
Yeah, we don't want to give it away. But so you're saying that this kind of catalogs, the Monsanto Papers, catalogs his journey, finding out and trying to get justice in this situation.
Trying to stay alive long enough to get justice and
Wow.
to really raise awareness around the world about the dangers of this chemical. But I really do hope people understand it's not just Lee Johnson, it's not just glyphosate, it's not just Monsanto. This story is repeated over and over with other companies, Dow, DuPont, Syngenta, the different chemicals, the different insecticides, the different, PFAS that's out there that is poisoning so many people. This is a cautionary tale, I guess, just looking at one company, one chemical, one man. But this is a story that is much bigger and is affecting, all of us. And so
Are you beginning to hear? Yes. Are you beginning to hear from other people now that they're going, hey, this is maybe what's happened to me?
Oh my goodness. I've been talking to, for years now. I've been covering this and writing about this issue for so long. People do come to me with their stories almost every day.
Yeah.
I get emails or phone calls, or I even get some handwritten letters from people who've lost a loved one or suffering from cancer themselves, and they just want to tell their story. They're looking for answers to a question they can't find, or a document or a piece of research. And I'm certainly not a scientist or a doctor, but I guess I'm someone who cares, and I'm someone who knows where you can find information. So that's why the book is dedicated to, people with cancer, because I just find it, I don't know. As I said, my father died of cancer in October, and I've had so many friends and family members and others affected by this disease. And I just want to do everything we can to try to prevent this sort of a future for our kids, if possible.
Well, it occurs to me that you're a lot like Erin Brockovich and that story. Do you think there's a movie that could come out of this story and others from what you've uncovered?
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about that, but there are.
I'm getting warm.
There are things underway.
I love it. Well, for what it's worth, I loved the Erin Brockovich story, and I love it when regular folks, and certainly you're a bit more than regular because you really are a journalist who has invested in investigating very important issues that pertain to the health and well-being of mankind. So that's amazing. But to actually uncover huge corruption, huge lies, huge deception, to be able to put facts to it so that mankind can literally be saved from this, that is huge. And so to me, that is very movie worthy, and I'd love to see, and if I could just recommend someone to play you, let me just think. No, I'm not going to do that. But, you're stunningly beautiful, as well as being somebody who's helping all of us to understand this. I feel more aware just having this interview about, and I think we all have been understanding that our environment, it's very important. We've got all of these globalists and people who want to, use windmills to protect Texas from windstorms or ice storms. And it didn't work at all, by the way, everybody. But this is legit. Like, this is what mankind is doing to harm mankind. And it has to be exposed.
We quite literally are poisoning our planet in many different ways. And my book just looks at one little tiny piece of that, but we are quite literally poisoning our planet. And if we want our kids to stay free of cancer and to be able to have kids of their own and to live, a relatively healthy, enjoyable life, we have got to do something about this. We just do.
Right. As we begin to wrap up, have you received death threats or anything like that? Like, do you feel that you've been in danger? Because when I look at the world, when money, greed, and power begin to be part of the puzzle that we're putting together, it can be actually quite dangerous for those who dare to speak.
Right. There was one point, there were some, what I took to be, threatening messages and emails coming my way. I've certainly just gotten just all the time barraged with hateful, vitriolic things coming from people that we have found out are linked to or paid by the industry. But yeah, there was a time when I was working on my first book where I got some late night, threatening messages that really caused me to not want to go, where you look out your window and you don't want to go out of your house and you're afraid and for a while. But I got over it.
Right. Well, we get over it, and in the end, we think about the good to humanity, and we think about how we have a certain season and maybe a certain calling and a destiny that we must fulfill. It's like breathing. And certainly you have found your place. However, it all came together. Information was given to you, and you knew that no matter what, this was something you had to put forward. Do you see it as somewhat of a calling? Has it been like a passion that has pushed you and compelled you past a regular, normal bar?
I guess so. I mean, I didn't really see that happening, but when I was at Reuters in those ending months and they had gotten to this new editor, and the new editor was saying, stop writing about these things, just stop writing about the science and stop writing about this chemical. No one cares. It's not going to be a big deal. And I just, I could have walked away, I suppose, and just taken another beat but I don't know. I couldn't do it. I was like, no, this is important. I know this is important. I know this is meaningful, and I'm not going to stop. So is that a calling? I don't know. Or if it's just stubbornness, I don't know.
I think it is. I think it is, and I can only speak that from my own life, that when you get so compelled that you must speak or you can't live, like it just seems that it's too important not to let go in spite of potential job loss, in spite of potential, public humiliation or trying to shame you or even danger to your very own life. You just feel that this is what I was born to do. And maybe you haven't quite framed it that way, but it does become something like when you see what you've done, it's unusual, it's powerful. And to me, it's movie worthy. So I hope that does happen. But it's also helping us, and it's saving humanity, and it's saving lives. If we're all more aware, we're going to be more careful. Is there anything that you ask or tell people to do? I mean, clearly becoming aware is a very good thing. Is there anything else that common folks can do to help make our world a bit safer, knowing what you have written about?
Well, I think every individual has their own, place in their world where their time, their energy, their perspective, right. But I do think if this is something that you are interested in or concerned about, there's a lot of information out there that you can find and it really can be protective of your health, on an immediate basis, just to change some things about your lifestyle and your food purchases and things like that. And then if you want to be involved on a community level, there are a number of organizations and people who are trying to get their school districts or their, city council or whatever to read the documents, to read the research, to look at what is actually out there, to inform them about the risks to, their community. Maybe you don't need to spray pesticides all over the playground where your kids are going to go throw a ball and roll around. Maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe dandelions are okay, right? I mean, these conversations are being had, and I think people should feel open to getting involved in those conversations.
Right. Well, absolutely. Well, I sure appreciate Carey Gillam. This is her book, The Monsanto Papers. You can get it at most bookstores, Canada, the United States, all over the place. It's going like hotcakes. It will soon be out on Audible, and it'll probably help you to understand and how to protect your family a little bit better, and to know what we're facing in the world and what maybe we all have to stand against, actually. And so, Carey, a last word, anything that you'd like to say that maybe we haven't covered?
No, I mean, if you want to know more about me or about my books, I have a website, careygillam.com.
Excellent.
CAR, and the nonprofit where I do research right now is called US Right to Know, usrtk.org. We provide links for free, free access to just loads and loads of documents about all sorts of public health matters, including about, the origins of the COVID virus and neonicotinoids and weed killers and, Bill Gates and Africa investments and all sorts of things that people are really interested in learning about now. So usrtk.org is a good place to go as well.
usrtk.org. USRTK.org, everybody. USRTK.org. That sounds amazing. And we certainly do want to know about the origin of the COVID virus. If that ever gets solved, I'd love to know what information you have on there. So I'll be checking that out.
We can throw that out. That's what we're trying to do, is we're doing Freedom of Information Act requests with CDC and other government agencies, and they're pushing back, but we're getting some documents. So
good. Okay, well, it sounds like that I know my viewers are very awakened to what is going on, so this will be a great source that they'll want to check out, and all those documents that you can get access to. 100%. It's amazing what people try to hide, and they don't seem to be able to answer a question honestly or straight up anymore. So very interesting. Thank you so much, Ms. Gillam. It's been a privilege and an honor to have you on. So thanks for your time today. I know you're a very busy woman, and I appreciate you enlightening our audience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. That was
You're welcome.
Much appreciated.